Welcome back to the channel. This week features some insane low stakes poker hands from both 1-2 and 1-3.
For the year 2025, I'm trying to make $25 an hour while playing both 1-2 and 1-3. Currently on one of the biggest upswings of my poker career, so let's see where we stand.
Our 1-2 stats haven't changed in a while because I've been trying to play catch up on my 1-3 hours for the year, so I've currently played 63 hours and 40 minutes of 1-2 and profited $1,926 for an hourly win rate of $30.25. As for 1-3, we just came off two of the wildest weeks of my poker career, so our stats are sitting pretty. We've played a total of 57 hours and 30 minutes of 1-3 and profited $3,981 for a ridiculous hourly win rate of $69.23. I'm not ignorant to the fact that these stats are inflated because of our recent success, but I feel like I've been playing a solid game and limiting my mistakes. Combining these stats, we've played a total of 121 hours and 10 minutes of live poker and profited $5,907 for an hourly win rate of $48.75, which is almost double our goal. Pretty happy with where these numbers sit, but there's still plenty of time left in the year, so we have to stay humble, stick to our game, and stay locked in. From July 3rd to July 28th, I didn't play any poker because I had a lot of work to do with my other business, and also sprinkled in a couple weeks of family vacation at both Lake Tahoe and Carmel. It was nice to enjoy these two spots and relax for a bit, but I'm super excited to get back on the felt and see if we can keep this insane run of poker going by heading out to the nicest card room in Northern California, which is none other than Stone's Gambling Hall. We buy into the 1-2 game for the max of $300 and waste no time before getting in on the action. It's early in the morning and I'm just starting to get my chips organized when I see a player limp under the gun. Folds to me, and I somehow look down at the best hand ever created in pocket aces. Stacks weren't too deep early on, so I raised the price of poker to just $8 and just get action from the player under the gun. With $18 in the pot, we're off to a flop of 8-5-3 with two clubs giving us the overpair on a super connected board. Our opponent decides to lead out for $11, and I doubt they'd ever do this with the draw, so the main hand I'm putting them on is an 8, pocket 9s, or pocket 10s, and not much else. Usually I'd raise in this spot to avoid a scare card coming out on the turn, but I'm still in shock that we got dealt aces the first hand, so I decide to call in position, increasing this pot to $40 even. Off to a turn, and this board gets a lot more connected when the 6 of spades peels off, putting two flush draws on the board. Our opponent continues the aggression for $18, with just a little over $60 in their stack. There's only one move, which is all in. Our opponent wastes no time before snap calling, and I roll over my hand like I always do when I'm all in and get shown pocket 5s for flop middle set. With just 2 outs and a dream, we fail to hit, and just like that, we get a warm welcome back from vacation by getting our aces cracked in our first hand of the day for the first time in my life. Could this miracle sun run finally be coming to an end? Only one way to find out. Just a few hands later, early position opens the action to $7, and I'm in middle position and look down at 7-8 of hearts. I'm never 3-betting an early position open against a tighter player with a suited connector, so I just call, and surprisingly everyone else gets out of the way. Off to a flop heads up of Queen 8-7 with 2 spades giving us bottom 2 pair. He decides to start off with a check, and on this board I'm never slow playing, so I throw out a bet of $10 to which he quickly calls. Since he checked and didn't check raise, I'm basically putting him on an average queen or a middling pair like jacks, 10s, or 9s and not much else. Off to a turn, and it rolls out the 4 of hearts, which in my opinion is a blank. This player is never opening 6-5 in early position, so the straight is not something I'm worried about. With $35 in the pot, I want to get my value now before any scare card comes out on the river, so I size up to $30. Once again, our opponent puts in the call, increasing this pot to $95. Feeling pretty good about our hand, and we're off to a river which rolls out the 9 of spades, bringing in the front door flush and giving pocket 9s a set. Surprisingly, our opponent checks again, and I think he'd lead out with the set in this spot, so I still think I have the best hand. Most players would check back this river almost every time, but it's super important to go for thin value in these spots to maximize your hourly win rate. So that's what I do by putting our opponent all in for $51. He goes deep in the tank for over a minute and eventually decides to put in the call. I roll over my hand, and it's good after our opponent tosses his in the muck. Just like that, we're able to get all the money back we lost with pocket aces, and we're now back in the positive. Next hand up, there's one limp in early position. Now the player to my right, who is the one player in the entire world that I have the most history with, now raises to 20. Over the 5+ years I've been playing against him, I've never once seen him raise this size unless he specifically has pocket queens, pocket kings, or pocket aces in the occasional ace-king suited. So my alarm bells are going off, but when I'm next to act, I look down at my hand and things are about to get interesting because I open up the Cowboys pocket kings. If I knew someone was strong and we were over $300 effective, I'd 3-bet to at least $70 looking to play for stacks, but this is a unique situation because he tends to overfold. So in order to keep pocket queens and ace king in there, I min-click our opponent to $40 and action folds back to him. He now wastes no time before shoving a 4-bet right in our face to $120 even. In the thousands of hands I've played against him, I've never seen him 4-bet queens or ace king, so we either have the same exact holding or he has me dominated with the aces. So I decided to just toss pocket kings in the muck pre-flop and limit the damage to just a $40 loss. Some of you might think this is ridiculous, and I honestly don't blame you, but this was probably the easiest fold of the year for me, and our opponent confirmed exactly what he had, which was obviously aces. After folding the second best hand on planet Earth pre-flop for maybe the third time in my life, we lose a little money with 10-9 of diamonds in a small pot before the one and only Arrow Innovations decides to hop in our 1-2 game to battle it out. He was in town to meet up with family, so we decided to catch up and meet up on the felt here at Stone's Gambling Hall. If you want to see what Vegas mid-stakes poker is all about, go over to his channel and give him a sub. He just sat down and we waste no time before getting involved in a hand. I'm in early position and look down at ace-3 of hearts, and decide to just call the $2 with some evil intentions if things get set up the right way. Next to act, who's a tighter player, now raises to 12, and we see Arrow call in the cutoff. Folds back to me, and if a player had a sizing tell or a looser player raise, I'd put in the old limp re-raise like I've done throughout the years, but since a tighter player raised, I'm more than happy to see a flop for $10 more with a beautiful hand. So I toss in the chips, and we're off to a flop 3 ways of ace-10-3 rainbow, giving us top and bottom pair. I check and flow. Now the original raiser checks as well, so he's probably scared of the ace. But it doesn't deter Arrow because he now leads out for $15. Since he didn't 3-bet pre-flop, I think pocket aces, pocket tens, and most likely ace-10 would have put in the raise, so I'm basically putting him on a weak ace, a 10, or a gut shot like queen-jack. Usually I'd 3-bet small in this spot to try and build up a pot, but we all know Arrow is a solid player and would probably put me on ace-3 or pocket 3s since I limped under the gun. So in order to disguise and underrep my hand, I decide to just flat and the original raiser gets out of the way. Off to a turn which rolls out the 7 of spades, putting 2 flush draws out there, making this board a lot more connected. Usually I'd check again and let our opponent continue betting in order to go for the check raise, but against good players it's important to play unorthodox so your play makes them question your holding. So I decide to take over the betting lead and throw out a bet of $40 targeting an ace that doesn't know what the hell I'm doing. But now he does something I wasn't expecting and goes all in and has me covered. Never folding against a capable opponent, so I snap call, and we both roll over our hands and he shows ace-7 offsuit for a better 2 pair. With over $420 in the pot, we're off to a river with just 2 outs and a dream. We see the miraculous 10 of hearts counterfeiting his 2 pair and giving us the same exact hand, aces and 10s with the 7 kicker. Pretty wild roller coaster of a hand to only profit a few bucks, but given that turn card, I'll take it any day of the week and twice on Sunday. If you follow my vlog, you know I hate playing below 100 big blinds, so after losing a couple small pots, I decided to add on $200 to max out my stack, and I'm now into the game for $500 total. After adding on, I ended up winning a couple small uneventful pots before our next interesting hand at day 1. For this one, I'm in middle position and look down at the beautiful ace-jack of hearts, raise the price of poker to $10 and just get called by the low jack. Off to a flop heads up of King 10-5 all hearts, giving us the nut flush and a redraw to a royal. Most of the time I'd bet my entire range on this board, especially holding a heart, but since the King and 10 of hearts are on the board, and I have the ace and jack in my hand, there's not many hands he could have that we could get 3 streets of value from. So I check, and he snap checks it back. Off to a turn which peels off the 7 of spades, and we've got to at least start going for value. So I start off with a bet of $10 to which our opponent eventually calls, doubling this pot to 40. I'm basically putting him on a 10 or a smaller pair with a heart in it, since queen jack or a pair of kings probably would have bet on the flop. So keeping that in mind, we're off to a river which rolls out the 8 of hearts, bringing 4 to a flush. Now a pair of 10s without a heart is never calling a bet, so my goal with my sizing is to target a hand like pocket 6s through pocket 9s with a heart, which is why I end up betting $15. We avoid the snap call, so he definitely doesn't have the queen of hearts in his hand, but he eventually decides to call, and we show him the bad news. Not the most eventful pot, but anytime I flop the nut flush and can get 2 streets of value, you can guarantee it'll be featured on the vlog. Next hand up is a wild one. I'm under the gun and open ace-9 of clubs to $10 and get called by the button in big blind. With 3-way action, we're off to a flop of jack 9-9, giving us the best possible trips. I start off with a small bet of just $8, mainly trying to keep all the small pairs in there, and now the button decides to raise to 20. The main hand I'm putting him on is a jack, trying not to only find out where they're at, but maintain position and control the pot. If this opponent was a calling station, I'd put in another raise, but my hand doesn't need much protection, and if I re-raise against this opponent, he'd most likely fold, so I decide to underrep my hand and just toss in the extra $12, increasing this pot to $70. Off to a turn, and it rolls out the 10 of spades, which shouldn't change much, since I doubt our opponent is raising with king, queen, or 7-8. So I check and flow, and now he decides to check it back, which basically confirms that he has a jack, and a jack only. So keeping that in mind, we're off to a river, which rolls out a blank in the 6 of spades, and now it's time to take our opponent to Value Town. I throw out a bet of $45 targeting queen jack, king jack, and ace jack. Without much hesitation, our opponent slides in the chips, indicating a call. I roll over my hand, and he tosses his in the mug, giving us the winner. The big blind was super pissed because they had king queen and would have made the straight on the turn, but the button raising on the flop got him out of there, so we got the best of both worlds that hand. At this point in the session, we battled back to only being down $25, which isn't bad, especially after getting our aces cracked the very first hand of the day. For this hand, I'm under the gun and look down at the snowmen, pocket 8s, and open the action to $10. Action folds all the way to Arrow, who is in the hijack, who calls the $10, and button comes along for the ride as well. With $30 in the pot, the flop is ridiculous when it rolls out 998 rainbow, giving us the flop full house. Since I basically have this board locked up, I decide to start off with a check, and now Arrow throws out a bet of $10. The button folds, and there's no point in raising because he either has a bluff or a pair lower than 8s, since he would have 3-bet pocket 10s or better pre-flop, and if he has a 9, he'll also bet on the turn and we could implement the check raise. So with $50 in the pot, we're off to a turn which rolls out the king of diamonds, which I wasn't a big fan of. I stick with the plan and check again, and now he decides to check it back. So we could throw him having a 9 completely out the window. If he had a king, he probably would have bet as well, so I'm putting him on a bluff that's giving up or a small pocket pair. Off to a river, and it rolls out the 3 of clubs, which is obviously a blank. Since we've determined he either has a bluff or a smaller pair, the only play in my opinion is to throw out a super small bet to either induce a raise or get called from worse. So I throw out 1 red chip for a $5 bet, and he side calls it off with pocket 4s and said we got the max. By winning that pot, we were able to get back above the even mark and accomplish what we came here for, to get a feel for our game after a long needed break and escape with a win. But don't go anywhere just yet, because there's an insane 1-3 session that's about to go down, but before we get there, let's get to the outro.
Glad we were able to battle back and book a profit after taking 2 weeks off from vacation and getting our aces cracked the very first hand. in for 500 and out for 509 for a whopping $9 win.
Yesterday's session allowed us to get back in the groove after a long break, so we're back to upping the stakes again and buy into the 1-3 match stack game for $500. In our first hand of the day, we waste no time before getting in on the action. I'm under the gun and look down at ace 4 of hearts and raise it up to $15. Hijack and small blind think it's a fair price, so we're off to a flop 3 ways of 10-4-3 with 2 spades giving us middle pair best kicker. Pretty decent flop for our hand, so I start off with the value and protection bet for $20. Surprisingly, both players put in the call, increasing this pot to 105. It's possible one of them has us beat with the 10, but in my opinion, there's a shit ton of draws out there that we're still ahead of. There's a whole bunch of flush draws, 5-6, and ace 5 for the straight draws, and possibly a stubborn pair of 3s that's hanging in there. So I'm not convinced I'm beat just yet. We're off to a turn which rolls out the 8 of diamonds, putting 2 flush draws on the board. Small blind checks to me again, and I think I could go either way here. Check evaluate to see what our opponents do, or bet to get protection from the million draws out there, especially since I don't think the 8 helped anyone unless they specifically have 10-8. I decided to go with the latter and throw out a bet of $55, and once again both players put in the call, increasing this pot to $270. Unless I hit an ace or 4, I'm not putting in any more money in this pot, so I'm hoping for a blank to make my life easy. I think we get one in the jack of clubs because all the flush and straight draws brick out. Unless our opponents have a jack high flush draw or jack 10 which already has us beat, this card shouldn't do anything for us. Small blind checks again. I decide to finally check it now. Now the hijack checks it back. I roll over my hand expecting to be good here a decent amount of the time. The small blind ruins our plans by showing 10-9 of diamonds for a better pair. There was zero chance of getting him off this hand because he picked up a flush draw on the turn, so this hand was doomed from the start. Don't really mind how I played it, but looking back I think checking the turn and evaluating betting sizes on the river would be the best play. Just a few orbits later, the hijack opens the action to $15, and I'm on the button and look down at queen jack of diamonds. If I had a better feel for the table, I'd mix this into my 3 betting range, but the day is young and I just want to see a flop in position. So I call and the blinds get out of the way, so we're going heads up to a flop that rolls out 10-8-4 with 1 diamond giving us 2 overs, a gut shot, and a backdoor flush draw. Our opponent continues the aggression with the c-bet of $20, and I call to see what develops. With $70 in the pot, we're off to a turn which rolls out the best card in the deck and the 9 of diamonds, giving us the straight with a redraw to a straight flush. To make things even better, our opponent keeps betting out, but only for $25 this time. But regardless, it's time to put in a raise and build up a pot. I make it $75 to go, and he basically snap calls, increasing this pot to $220. Off to a river, and unless I hit the straight flush, I'd love to avoid the diamond in case it kills our action. We get what we want when the river rolls out the 5 of spades and we're still sitting here with the nuts. He checks in flow. Since he called our turn raise, the range I'm putting him on is some sort of 10, 2 pair, or an overpair. Against that range, I think betting around 2/3 for value is best, so I settle on a bet of $145, and after a mini tank, our opponent eventually puts in the call and we show him the bad news. He rolls over pocket aces in disgust, and just like that, we're back above the even mark after scooping in over a $500 pot. A few hands go by and we get a dealer change, so that means we're up for a local famous $15 bomb pot. 7 people join the party, so there's 105 in the middle and I get dealt queen 9 offsuit. Off to a flop 7 ways of queen jack 4 rainbow, giving us top pair very average kicker. It's hard to make a pair, let alone top pair, so anytime I get it, I always bet it. So I throw out a value bet of $40 and get called by the hijack and small blind, increasing this pot to $225. The problem with bomb pots is I could either have a hand like queen deuce absolutely dominated, or someone could have king queen and have us in horrible shape. No clue in knowing just yet, so I'm gonna proceed with caution. Off to a turn 3 ways and it peels off the 7 of clubs. Small blind checks, and at this point I think my hand can only get 2 streets of value max, which is why I check, and the hijack checks it back. I think if the hijack had a hand better than ours, he would have thrown out a value bet, so I'm actually pretty confident we have the best hand. Off to a river, and it rolls out the 5 of diamonds. Small blind now decides to take the betting lead and throws out $90 in chips. It's possible you could have a better queen, or even a random 2 pair since it's a bomb pot, but I checked back the turn for pot control and basically made up my mind I'm calling a bet since the main straight draws missed in 10-9 and King 10. So I put in the chips and the hijack gets out of the way. Small blind rolls over 10-9 for the missed open-ender, and we scoop in this sizable pot with just a weak top pair. Pretty happy with how I read the situation, and now I'm just looking to keep this momentum rolling. After winning the bomb pot, I decided to do my favorite thing in poker, which is to color up those boring $5 red chips, turn them into $25 green ones. For this next hand, I'm under the gun and look down at ace 5 of diamonds. Just like in our first session, I decide to limp with the suited ace and see what develops. Action folds to the cutoff, who's been opening a ton of hands, and he now raises to 20. Folds back to me. It's important to protect your limping range, especially with the tight image, so I implement the old under the gun limp re-raise and make it $75 to go, and our opponent snap folds saying how I must have pocket aces. The plan was executed to perfection, and you always gotta keep them guessing. The next hand occurs just a few orbits later when the $6 straddle is on, and the button raises to 15. I'm next to act and look down at the best hand ever created in pocket aces. Usually I'd 3-bet close to 4x, especially out of position, but the button isn't too deep and I wanted to make sure he wouldn't fold, so I raised to 40. Out of nowhere I get cold called by both the big blind and straddler, which gives the button an amazing price to continue, so he puts in the remaining $25. Off to a flop 4 ways in the worst position possible of 10-10-8 with 2 hearts giving us the overpair on a pretty connected board. I decided to bet $55 for value, which gets the big blind and straddler out of there, but now the button says screw it and goes all in for $220. I snap call, increasing this pot to $600 even. We both roll over our hands and he shows jack 9 of diamonds for the open-ended straight draw. Just need to fade a queen or a 7 and we'll be up big on the day. Turn is clean in the 5 of clubs, and the river rolls out the 8 of clubs, pairing the board and giving us the winner. Gotta love fading draws to scoop in a big pot, and now I just got one thing to say.
Tell them to bring me my money.
Our next interesting pot occurs when I'm under the gun and get dealt the least popular hand in low stakes poker, an ace king offsuit, and open it to $15. Button and small blind come along for the ride, so we're off to a flop 3 ways of ace jack 8 all spades, giving us top pair with the nut flush draw. Checks to me, I throw out a value bet of $20, basically just targeting 1 pair holdings before the board gets any scarier. I get 1 customer in the small blind, increasing this pot to 85, and the turn rolls out the 5 of clubs. Still think a value bet is in order, so I keep the aggression going with a $45 bet, to which you waste no time calling. I think all his jack X hands are folding by now, and his 2 pairs and flushes probably would have raised, so I'm basically putting him on a weaker ace or a hand like 10-9 for the straight draw. Keeping that in mind, we're off to a river which rolls out the jack of diamonds pairing the board. Like I said earlier, I'm not afraid of a jack, so with $175 in the pot, I throw out a bet of $75 targeting all the worst aces. He goes deep in the tank before eventually folding the ace of clubs face up, owning our soul. Props to him for making the right fold, but I guess I should have bet a little smaller to ensure a call and get 3 streets of value. Not the biggest deal, but gotta make the adjustment going forward to improve my hourly win rate. At this point in the session, we were up over $600, but over the next hour or so, we played in a ton of boring, uneventful pots that we kept losing, which unfortunately added up, so let's get to the outro.
Went a little card dead at the end, but it felt super nice to end the month on a high note. In for the original 500 and out for $790 for a $290 win.
As for this week in poker, we had a good run. Nothing compared to the last couple weeks, but I'll take this week's results every time. We played a total of 6 hours and 45 minutes of live poker and profited $299 total for an hourly win rate of $44.30. Pretty happy with this result, especially after getting our aces cracked in the first hand of the week. We finally played our first 1-2 session in a while, so here's where our stats sit. We played a total of 66 hours and 40 minutes of 1-2 and profited $1,935 for an hourly win rate of $29.02. It felt good to get back in the 1-2 mix for a bit, and I look forward to doing it more in the near future. As for our 1-3 stats, they just keep climbing. We played a total of 61 hours and 15 minutes and profited $4,271 for an hourly win rate of $69.73. Pretty fired up about this number and look to try and keep it rolling in the future. Combining our stats, we played a total of 127 hours and 55 minutes of live poker and profited $6,206 for an hourly win rate of $48.52, which is almost double our goal. I know this current upswing has padded this number, but I feel like I'm playing really good poker and looking forward to try and keep padding the stats. Thanks for watching, and as always, I hope you guys run good at the tables, and I'd appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button to help me reach my new year-end goal of 25,000 subscribers.